Hello YouTube, Captain Mac here, and this is going to be a more advanced tutorial on the G1000. Some of you probably looked at the title and said, we already did a G1000 tutorial. And we did. That was for the default G1000 that comes with FSX. It's available in the Cessna, and I think there's one available in the Beach Baron as well. And it's pretty neat, and it's got a few functions on it. It's a little better than flying without it, I suppose, but certainly not as good as a G1000 can get. The one we're going to look at today, this is a little more advanced. This is the, oh wow, my throat just like caught on me there. This is the G1000 that you'll find in the Flight 1 software King Air or Beach Super King Air 200. And it's certainly got a lot more functionality available than the default FSX has. That being said, I found some tutorials on a real-world G1000, and this thing doesn't come close either. I mean, not even a little bit. There's about a billion more things you can do. But they did a pretty good job with this one, and it certainly has a lot more to it than the default FSX. And so I thought, you know what, there's a few different companies out there. I think Carenado does a couple aircraft with G1000 in them and so on. And they're probably going to be relatively similar to this one. And since we've already done a basic tutorial, this advanced should give you a little more idea of what else is available. So even if all the functions that are in this one aren't in yours, or yours has some functions that aren't available in this one, it should at least get you on the right track to being able to figure it out. So, enough about that. Let's hop on in the aircraft here. And as you can see, we're sitting in San Diego here. I've got the aircraft all fired up and ready to go. We're not actually going to be going anywhere. My sim's being really choppy right now because I'm actually processing a video right now as I'm making this video. So my computer's screaming at me, going, "What is wrong with you?" But let's go ahead and we're going to do this just like pretty much the same way we did on the last one. We're going to start with the primary flight display here. And then we'll move over here to the nav display. We'll go all the way around the thing, taking a look at all the functions that are available. And there's quite a bit we can do with this thing. So let's just hop right on into it. I'm going to pop it up so it's easier to see. And let's see if we can make this a little, it looks a little narrow there to me. So make it a little bit bigger there. So we'll just start right over here in the top left corner. This is our nav radio tuning knob here. And as you can see, you've got nav 1 and nav 2. Now, if you push the center button here, it switches between nav 1 and nav 2. The active navigation radio is highlighted white with a blue box around it, and the blue box also indicates the inactive frequency. So if we're going to change frequencies, this will be the one we change. This is our active frequency here. So let's hop back up to nav 1. And to tune a frequency on this, it's really similar to what it was in the default FSX G1000. This thing's a little touchy. So you can see that when I come over here, I get my plus sign, and you can get that almost all the way to the center there. That's all for adjusting the same number. I think that's the kilohertz. Isn't this the kilohertz, and this is the megahertz? I could be wrong about that. But either way, this is for adjusting the numbers on the right. And if I come down to the bottom here, it's still adjusting the numbers on the right. So I go over to the left here, it's still adjusting the numbers on the right. If I go up to the top, then it adjusts the numbers on the left, which I believe is the megahertz. So for whatever reason, little quirk about this thing, I figured I'd just show that right away. If you want to adjust the kilohertz or the smaller portion of your frequency here, you can use any one of these three sides. And then of course to adjust the megahertz here, you're going to use the top. And it's as simple as that. So you scroll on the top of the wheel here, and that's all I'm doing. I'm using the scroll. I could probably, I could click here with the plus sign, left click the mouse and it goes up. Go to the minus sign, left click the mouse and it goes down. I always found it just a little easier to scroll. I can get to where I want to really quick. Choose my megahertz, flip over to the side here, choose my kilohertz, and I'm good to go. So if that was the frequency I wanted, then all I need to do is press this button right here, and it switches them, and that is now the active frequency. And it just so happens that that is a legitimate frequency for a VOR. So you notice that the three-letter identifier for the VOR popped up right here, and the VOR needle changed down here. Now we've got an offset bar and so on. And just like we did with our, just like we would do with our VOR, when we're using regular instruments, we can change our course heading so that this pointer, my brain doesn't want to function for some reason. We can change our course heading so that the pointer points in the direction of the VOR depending on where we're going. This is not a VOR tutorial. The point is right now we are to the left of the course required to fly to that VOR. And I'm not going to go any further than that on it, otherwise we're going to end up with another VOR tutorial and we don't want that. Once again, you can just push the center, make sure there's no plus or minus sign, just push the center of the button there and it'll switch to nav2 and you can adjust your nav2 radio. Fantastic. Let's get down here to all the good functions that are part of this G1000. All of these buttons down here, they're called soft keys. And I think the reason they call them soft keys is because the function that key performs can change depending on what mode you're using. For example, we'll start over here with the inset key, and I have no inset, but when I press it, you see a little inset map pops up, and this map is a representation of this right here. That's handy so that we don't have to look over there, especially in the sim, because in the sim it can sometimes be hard to look to the left or the right, so having that little pop-up in there is fantastic. However, there's a lot going on there and it's really hard to see anything, so I can use the declutter function. Right now it's not decluttered at all. If I press it once, it gives me declutter 1, and you saw that got rid of a little bit of the information that's on that inset map, and it includes traffic, just so you know there's an aircraft coming in right now. If I hit the declutter button again, declutter 2, you can see that got rid of a lot of information, made it a lot easier to see, and then declutter 3 will get rid of everything else, including the traffic, and now I have a pretty good view of that. All that being said, one thing that can be a little frustrating here is you have to realize that your range map is this guy over here. Okay, so if we want to zoom in, we go to the left side here, and I'm using the scroll wheel again. I typically use the scroll wheel. And if we want to zoom out, we go to the right side here. So let's just declutter back 1 or 2 here. We can see that traffic coming in if we want, and that's your inset map. Now, along with that, you can see right above this here, I've got my outside air temperature, and I've got my difference between standard temperature, standard atmosphere, which is plus 16 degrees Fahrenheit. So 16 degrees above, 16 degrees Fahrenheit above standard temperature. Okay, good information. If you want to do real world operations and really get serious about it, that is definitely some information you'll need. I can also click it off just like that. Those remain right there. They're not part of the inset map, but they show up right below it, so they're easy to find there. Alright, let's turn that off and get it out of the way, and let's hop over here to the PFD, Primary Flight Display. That's this guy, and if we click on the PFD, we get a whole bunch of options popping up over here. Now, I have on my other screen over here, on this side, you can't see it.
Traffic.
Over there. Yes, I know there's traffic coming, we saw it. I've actually got a flow chart that tells us where everything goes here. So if you decide to purchase the Flight 1 King Air, you look in the manual, you go down to page, I'm on page 31, and it gives you a flow chart of how everything works. So we can start out with our flight director format. It's this guy right here. And if we click on that, we can choose single queue or cross pointer. Now, the grayed out area is the currently active one. So right now it's active on single queue. If I switch it to cross pointer, now that one's active, and you can see it change to a different type of flight director there. So there's our single queue, that's the little yellow triangle there, and there's our cross pointer there. And those are the only options available to us in the PFD FD format mode here, with flight director format mode. So me personally, I think the single queue works just fine, so I usually leave it on that. And then all I have to do is hit the back button, and that takes me back to that first page. Now, keep in mind, this is the first page. We went PFD, then FD format, and when I hit back, it goes all the way back to the beginning. So you have to remember that if you're trying to navigate through here quickly. So if we hit the PFD again, we've got DFLTS. You know what, this is gonna the sound's gonna go quiet here for a second, but I just want to double check DFLTS, and I'm looking over here. Where's it at? There it is. It says you press it to reset the PFD options to the default selections. Okay, so default selections, that makes sense. That's what DFLTS is. So if we've made a bunch of changes, we want it to go back to where it was when we started, we can press on the default selections key, and it'll reset everything for us, which is fantastic. The wind key here, when you click on that, it actually gives you 4 different options, option 1, 2, 3, and off. And I don't think we're getting any wind information. So when I click on option 1, it says no wind data, option 2, no wind data, option 3, no wind data. long and short of it is, it's a different display in this little box for how the wind, the wind relative to your aircraft is displayed. So really, it's very simple. You go in here, pick option 1, 2, or 3, and decide which one has the best display for what you're trying to do, and that's the one you go with. So it doesn't really matter that I don't have any wind data showing up right now, because you can choose it on your own. But just know that that's how you choose them, and you can also turn it off by clicking over here on the off button. So we'll leave it off for now since we don't have any wind data, and we'll hit the back button. And look, it took us all the way back to the home page, if you will, again. So let's hit the PFD one more time, and let's see what else we got. On the DME switch here, that's all it is. It's DME. It's telling us, it's a little pop-up here that tells us the distance from where we're at to whatever we have tuned into nav 1, right? So if I press on bearing 1, that gives me the bearing right here to IPL, right? Bearing 2 puts it down over here. So basically what I'm doing by pressing on these is I'm changing the information that's available in my little insets down here. See that? There's my ADF, nothing. Turn the DME off, nothing. Click it on, that's DME to nav 1. Okay. That's my bearing to JLI. Alright, so notice that it's using nav 1. It's using the currently the VOR that's input into the nav radio right now. My brain does not want to function, guys. So JLI, you see up here highlighted in green, JLI 114.0, and that's where it's pointing. So this blue arrow is telling us that this is the direction we need to fly to intercept this VOR and track inbound. If I press it again, it gives me some different information now it's using GPS, not nav1. There's a difference, and it's giving me a completely different distance as well, so it must be a different waypoint that it's referring to in that case. And then the automatic direction finder, we have not done a tutorial on some of this stuff yet, so I'm really not going into depth. I'm just showing you the options that are available here. And then bearing 2 is basically some of the same information. Okay, so enough about that. I don't want to confuse you guys because this is not a tutorial on ADF, DME, VORs, none of that stuff. This is just about this G1000. Alright, alternate units, if I press that, I can change between inches of mercury, which is, let's say 2992 is standard pressure. That's 2992, 29.992 inches of mercury. That's what inches is. I can change to hectopascals, and that's where you get your 1013 hectopascals. That's what HPA is, in case anybody was wondering. I like to leave it in inches. And I can also change between feet and meters. If I click it there, so you look right now, my altitude for my autopilot, my altitude reference is set to 1500 feet. If I click on the meters button, it changes, and now it shows me, now I've still got 1500 feet, but it adds meters in there as well, so I can use both of those. Fantastic. And let's hit the back key, and guess where we went? Back to the home page. So hit the PFD one more time. Let's just make sure we covered everything. We did alternate units, standard barometric pressure. If I press that, it automatically tunes this to standard barometric pressure of 29.992. I can press it again for time reference, and I can actually start or stop my stopwatch. So let's press that off for a second, and let's see, we've got our VREFs are on there, and they're turned on. We can change those if we want by scrolling down here. And then if we use the, come on, it should be able to change it. These knobs are very, very, very fickle. Okay, there we go. So on the bottom here, I can change my VREF speed, and if I go to the left or right here, I can scroll down. So right now VREF is on. If I scroll on the bottom here, I can turn it off or back on. And the same would be said, I could go down here for V-rotate and so on. Okay, and I can also put my minimums in here as well. So if I scroll all the way down to minimums, go to the bottom, turn minimums to barometric pressure, or I can turn them to radio altimeter. Radio altimeter is basically a radio on the bottom of your aircraft, sends a signal down to the ground, it bounces back and tells you how high you are. If I want to use that, then I can go ahead and just tune in. Let's say we wanted to do 50 feet. We want to know when we're 50 feet above the ground. We're good to go. Press the center button and we're done. Press it again. We can change, we can put the timer, or we can go over here. That counts up, by the way. We can change that to count down. So if we want it to count down, then we would set it to down. Okay. We would scroll back over here and we would have to change this time to what we want it to start at, right? If it'll let me. Oh, it's still set to go up. Well, maybe it doesn't work right. I played with this thing, but I didn't hit every function, and that's one of the things, that's kind of the point here, is I want you guys to see all these functions. But nonetheless, if we want the timer to count up, go over to start, and we should be able to just hit, maybe it's enter. There we go. So we hit enter, and now it's timing for us. So where does this come in handy? Eventually we're going to do a tutorial on things like holding patterns. Now, we typically don't do a holding pattern in the sim because it's a sim. If we don't want to hold, we just fly on in. But in the real world, you might have to hold, you know, for weather or traffic or whatever. And depending on where you're told to hold and how you're told to hold, typically you fly 60-second legs. So I'm not going to go into that either because we're going to end up way off track if we do that. Just know that if you are put into a holding pattern, you're going to want to use your timer reference. And so it's good to know over here. So we use the enter button to start, use it again to stop, and then one more time to reset, and then we can go again. And we're good to go there. All right, enough about that. Let's turn that off. And what else do we got here? That was everything for the PFD. So we'll go back and let's look at the CDI now. I've shown this before. When you click this button, it changes between nav1 radio, nav2 radio, and GPS. So when we're on the nav1 radio, you can see that the arrow is green. It says VOR1, okay, and it can also say LOC1 if you're tracking an ILS or a localizer. And you can see that the nav1 radio active frequency is also highlighted in green. When I press the CDI button again and switch to nav2, you can see that it changes, and it gives you it highlights the nav2 frequency in green, and it gives us a pointer. And because we're tuned to 110.60, which is nothing where we're at, it's not picking up anything. Now if I wanted to, I could change that. Let's change it to 114.00 JLI just so that we're on the same one. And you'll see when I switch the frequencies, it'll show up the same way the the VOR1 was showing up. So switch them, give it a second, and there you go, JLI. Okay, and wow, did that plane just come out of the buildings there? God, you gotta love FSX AI traffic. We would change the course to change the direction that this arrow is pointed, right? Okay, good times. So that's the CDI, and then GPS is the same. Think of it as FMS, because when you put a flight plan in here, it flies GPS like it does, like a regular flight management system would fly FMS. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? So if you have a flight plan tuned in here, then that's what you want to be on, is GPS. If you're going to fly an ILS, you want to be on VOR1 or VOR2, and you want to make sure you have the right frequency tuned in. Now, if you tune in that frequency, if you do it properly, you get that frequency tuned in, and you intercept the localizer. It should automatically switch to whichever nav radio is set to intercept that localizer. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. So I don't know if it's supposed to or not. All right, enough about the CDI. Then we can also press the OBS. That's the Omni bearing selector. And now you can see it says 076 to IPL. That's the next waypoint on the GPS right now. And as far as I know, there's nothing I can do to switch that. So that's telling me where I need to go to get there. If I change this, turn that off, let's go to VOR1. See, there's no OBS option here. So I have to be on GPS to use the OBS option, and that's telling me that I need to fly 076 degrees to fly directly to, well, it was telling me that, to fly to IPL, which is the first waypoint on our flight plan. Okay, we've talked about that long enough. ADF and DME, this is where you tune in your ADF frequency, right here. Use the same knobs over here that we were using before.
Traffic.
And that's how we change our frequency. And we can always turn the cursor on and off. So you've got ADF mode, and that's the only mode on ADF, which makes sense, and then DME is on the nav1 because the VOR that we're tuned into has DME included in it. Hope that makes sense to everybody. I've talked about the transponder before. When you click on that button, you've got standby frequency, or not standby frequency. Standby puts it in standby. On is what you would typically use. Or you could use ground mode or on when you're on the ground. But when you're flying, you want to use altitude mode. That's the altitude reporting mode. If you're flying VFR, that's the code 1200. You can just click on VFR and it'll put it on that code for you, and you're good to go. Let's go back over there. If we get a code, a unique identifier from ATC, we click on that button there, and let's just say it was 2336. We just type them in order, and we're good to go. Altitude reporting mode. And then we could also, if we're told to ident, we can press the ident button. It'll send out a signal. It basically sends out like a ping, lets them know we're up and running and everything's good to go. And as you can see, just putting in the code took us back to our home page there. We already talked about timer reference, don't need to go through that again. And the last thing on here, we do have a message function. If there's a message, usually it's telling you you're about to enter airspace or something like that. But the nearest function, we click on that, and that gives us the nearest airports, just like the nearest function does in the default FSX aircraft. And as you can see, obviously San Diego is the nearest because we're at San Diego, and it gives you the tower frequency for each of these airports. So you go to the right here, you can scroll down through the various nearest airports until you find one you're looking for. Alright, pretty simple, easy stuff, good to go. Not much to it. Let's go up the right side here real quick. Actually, let's go down the right side. That's the best way to do it. So where we have nav on the left side, we have comm on the right side, and the comm works exactly the same as the nav radio does. Whatever's highlighted in green is the current active frequency, and the blue box is around the standby frequency. We can push the center of the button here, the center of the knob, to switch between comm 1 and comm 2, and we can switch between active and standby frequencies by clicking on the little arrows there. Easy enough, right? Barometric pressure knob, this is where we set our altimeter right here. And again, I use the scroll wheels, so scroll up or down, it doesn't matter which side you're on if you're scrolling up or down. Scroll to the current altimeter setting and then you're good to go. If you need to go to standard pressure, you can click in the middle and it goes straight to standard barometric pressure. We already talked about the range key here. This is used predominantly for the little map inset over here. So if I want to zoom in or out, find a plus or minus sign next to this thing somewhere, and again, these buttons are a little fickle, as you can see. There it is. So I can zoom way in or I can zoom way out. Easy enough. Standard function keys that you would see on your GPS and your default aircraft. You've got your direct to function. If I click on that right now, because I have a flight plan in there, it's asking me if I want to go direct to my next waypoint, which is IPL. If I do, I can hit enter again, and it'll activate. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to turn that off. Menu doesn't do anything unless there's menu options available. If I click on the flight plan, there's my flight plan right there. I can scroll down through it just like I can in your default GPS, and I can see what my flight plan is. I can't do a whole lot here. I can clear out waypoints if I want. So if I wanted to get rid of HEEDs, I could hit the clear button and there you go, HEEDs is gone. If I wanted to go to direct to hogs, I could scroll to hogs and then hit the direct to key and see it puts direct to hogs right in there. If I hit enter, it asks me if I want to activate, hit enter again, and it will activate. We don't want to do that though. Let's go back to our flight plan. And we don't want to clear anything else out. Procedure key works exactly the same. If you have an approach selected, typically it will give you the option to activate vectors to final or activate the approach, or we can select an approach by hitting the enter key. In this case though, we can also select our arrivals or our departures. So we're staring at runway 27 here. If I wanted to select a departure, I would scroll the mouse wheel down until I've highlighted select departure, hit the enter key, and then it's going to give me the departures that are available. I know from this runway and the direction we're heading that I would probably take the Pogi 4. So I would scroll the wheel down until Pogi 4 is highlighted, hit enter. I don't know the difference between, oh, that's traffic. For the runway, my apologies. So it's asking me what runway, all runways. This is your transition point. We know we're going to JLI, right? that's what we tuned into our VOR. So hey, what the heck, let's use JLI as our transition. So we'll select that, hit enter. Do we want to load it? Yes we do. Hit enter one more time, and look, it changed my first waypoint, and if you just saw it over here, it changed my map as well. So now we're going to fly out here to JLI, over to Loma, and so on, and if we hit flight plan, you'll see that it has put those in there for us, just like that, which is really nice. That's not a feature that's available on your default GPS. It doesn't put those in there for you. Menu functions, you can store a flight plan from this G1000, unlike your default FSX. You can store the flight plan, so you would just click on store, let's go back one. So if you're on the flight plan here, click flight plan, click menu. You can activate the current leg, you can go to store flight plan or invert flight plan. So let's say we're flying from San Diego to Phoenix and then back, we can go here and invert flight plan, and it'll just reverse it for us, which is really handy. If I want to store the flight plan, I highlight that option, click enter, and it should store it, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll have to check when I'm done with this video and see if it saved it in there. Maybe it's not storing the flight plan for us. I would think it would give you an option to give it a name or something. In the real G1000, you absolutely can store a flight plan. Alright, let's turn the menu off, turn that off, and that pretty much wraps up the primary flight display. Any questions? I didn't think so. That was for me being a smart aleck. Alright, so let's hop on over here to our nav display. Now, there are two things we need to know about this. First of all, it is not the same as our primary flight display. And second of all, you need to hit Shift and the number 4 to pull up this little guy right here so that you can actually make some changes in here. Now, what's really nice about this is if I'm working on my flight plan, okay, so all those buttons, let me move this down here for a second. So all of the buttons for flight plan, direct to menu, all of that for the nav display are on this little guy, which is located right down here. Move that out of the way. It's down there. So you can leave it down there, or now you can't make it larger by clicking anywhere here. So you hit Shift Shift and the number 4, and it pops up, and there you go. You're as right as rain. So what's really nice here, when we get over to flight plan, we'll talk about that in a minute. We can use these keys to enter waypoints and stuff like that, which is much easier than scrolling. All right, so let's go through the information here. We've got our ITT is basically our engine temperature here for the left engine and the right engine. We've got our current torque on each engine here. We've got our current prop RPMs for each engine here. And this little guy right here, these arrows are telling me which engine has a higher RPM rating. So right now, my prop sync isn't on, and my right prop has a much higher RPM at 1157 than my left prop, which is at 755. Not sure why that is, but let's take a look and see. Those look pretty even to me, so I'm not sure why one is higher than the other on here, but for whatever reason it is. Now, if I hit the prop sync, those arrows should center up. There we go. Give it a second. Let me move my prop handles real quick. And that should center up my prop RPMs here. There they go. Now they're going to even out. I know why it was doing that, because my throttles like to do that weird little thing where one jumps up and the other doesn't. Alright, so not overly critical for you to necessarily see that, but there you go. You can see that now the props are trying to sync up, and then once they get synced, this will actually turn to a diamond in the center when they're synced together. So, and they're not perfectly synced right now because the throttles aren't perfectly synced either. You can see the right throttle is at 199, the left is at 210 as far as the torque is concerned. But eventually, that's the idea, is to sync them up. So there's your prop RPMs right there. Let's see, we've got our turbine here. This is often referred to as your N1. Alright, so when we're doing our engine startup, this is what we're looking at, our N1. So we want it to go past 12% before we introduce fuel to the engine, and then when it goes past 50%, we turn the ignitions off. You may remember that from the many times I've done a startup on this aircraft for our Life of a Virtual Airline Pilot series. This is our fuel flow per engine, and it's in pounds per hour times 100. So if this is up here at the 2, that's 200 pounds per hour. Oil pressure left and right engine, oil temperature left and right engine, and as always, if it's in the green, it's good. If it's in the red, it's bad. And then of course for oil pressure and oil temperature, we've got a yellow as well. That's the whole left side of the nav display. Now, let's take a look at our map here. We can see that our flight plan is on there. And if we want to put a flight plan in here, here's how we do it. There's a couple of different ways. Let's start with the hard way first, and then I'll show you the easy way. If I had no flight plan in there right now, I could click on the flight plan function here. I could put in my, it should have my current airport. In fact, yeah, it should have my current airport in there. If it doesn't, then I put in my current airport, and then I would start putting in my waypoints just like I would in any other FMS or FMC. The difference here being that rather than having to click on this button here, come on, highlight for me. There we go, and then scroll down. Now, when I did that, it's asking me for waypoint information, and now what I could do is I could scroll through here, and I could put in waypoint information. So, just for the heck of it, let's say we want to go to KBXK, which is Buckeye Airport. So I scroll the outer wheel there, and then it should be the inner wheel to make it move over. There it is. So it's on the left side. Move it over one. Scroll. Okay. Outer wheel, inner wheel. Let's do it over here. There we go. Oh, we need to go the other way. Go to B. Oh, see? Very fickle. Very fickle. There we go. So anyway, I'm not going to put the whole thing in because we're going to be here for an hour trying to do that. So you can see it's very fickle. You got to get the mouse in just the right spot. However, I can, in this instance, use the keys right here. So I can press X and then K, and there you go, KBXK. I want, if that's what I want, I press enter, and bam, it puts it right in there. Okay, and that put all kinds of crazy stuff all over my flight plan there. Now, we're not going to KBXK, so we can just clear that off by pressing clear, and it should clear it off, and of course it doesn't want to now. So, there's nothing I can say about that except that it should have cleared it off, but now it doesn't want to clear it off because it's the first waypoint in the flight plan now, I guess. That being said, if I want to do different waypoints, I can scroll down. It opens this guy up. If I don't want that, let's see, go back. Oh, this thing is being a pain, you guys. This is like the worst time for this to happen. Flight plan off, flight plan on. Of course it would happen when I'm trying to show you guys how to use this thing, which, boy, it's just being a pain, huh? That knob is so fickle. There's a way to scroll through your waypoints here, and it's just not letting me right now. So you got to get that. Boy, talk about embarrassing, huh? Yeah, it's going to keep doing this to me, and it's going to drive me insane. The point is there's a way to scroll through your individual waypoints here. There we go. Okay, so use the top spot there. You can scroll through your waypoints. I should be able to clear that out, but it's not going to let me now for whatever reason. So, but let's say I wanted to clear out PGY. Scroll down there, press clear. It's not letting me. Okay, I know why now. Because this is part of the POGI 4 departure, so it's going to make you keep all those waypoints. Once you hit this en route section, you can clear out whatever you want. See, just like that. And the same can be said when you get down to an arrival. Once you're in the arrival section, it doesn't let you get rid of waypoints, which can be very frustrating. However, I don't think it lets you change them either, actually. Let's say we wanted to change browns. So we go here, and let's just say we wanted to change that to BXK. I'm just using KBXK because it's easy to remember for me. So if I put that in there and hit enter, it just puts it in front of brown. So I can add waypoints, but I can't delete waypoints. So it's something to keep in mind if you put a departure or arrival procedure in here. Alright, that being said, now it wants to just scroll through. There's supposed to be, in this particular function, there's no other options, but there are when we get to some other areas here. Now I'm going to show you the easy way to do a flight plan, because this thing's all kinds of messed up anyway, and that way you won't have to mess with this in the future. Go to your flights menu. Come on. Flights, flight planner. San Diego to Phoenix, that's the one we want. But you know how to use the flight planner. If you don't, see my tutorial on basic flight planning. Once you get the flight plan in there, click OK, save your flight plan, Yes, I'll replace it. Do you want to move your aircraft to the departure airport listed on the flight plan? No, in this case I'm going to leave it right where it's at. Hit no, and it's supposed to change my flight plan, but now it doesn't want to do that. I am seriously, like, now it's going to freeze on me. This is fantastic. I actually think I'm probably going to end this video now and redo the whole thing. Good times. Gotta love FSX. Close the program. We're done here. So many of you will quickly recognize that we are not at the same airport here, and the truth of the matter, it's actually been like a week since I made the first part of this video where the sim crashed. And the reason it's been so long is when that sim crashed, that was actually like my 6th try at it, and I was just having all kinds of issues. The good news is we've actually gone through most of this already. And I almost always forget to turn that stupid little menu bar off up top. It's very obnoxious, and I apologize for that. But we were looking at some flight plan information, and you can see there's no flight plan in here right now. And what I wanted to show you more than anything, and I started to show it over there, but really, there's a couple ways of looking at this. First of all, for some reason, from the time I made that video until now, loading a flight plan through FSX isn't working. However, if I have my ableist off DFB turned on and I change the flight plan there, it automatically updates the flight plan here. Not really sure why that is. However, if you give a quick scroll over here, wrong one. Come on now. Not the one I'm looking for. See this now. If nothing else, the most obnoxious thing to me about this particular G1000 is how touchy it is to find the right spot on the knob here. But there's a couple things we can look at here. First of all, from this mode right here, this map mode right here, if you scroll the outside wheel, now it's making a liar out of me. Looks like it's the inside wheel. Yeah, I'm sorry, the inside wheel. Once to the right, what you have here is your traffic. It's a dedicated traffic map, and basically it's TCAS is what it is, and it does work. If there's other aircraft in the air, it'll provide that information for you. Scroll it one more time, and now we're in a different view here. So let's just back up here for a second. So come on, now it doesn't want to do it. Go back to the map. See, it's so touchy. It's very obnoxious. There's the map there. Thank you very much. So one scroll up on the wheel, and now it's going to something different. You see what I'm talking about? This thing is so ridiculously touchy. There it is right there. Alright, so that was our view for the traffic map. Now if we scroll over here, you can actually see we actually have 4 windows down here. That's what these 4 squares are for here. And it looks like it's saying we're in Talkeetna, Alaska, but we're not. I'm going to tell you that right now. But this is a waypoint map, so this should give you your individual waypoints along the way. So if you have a flight plan in there, your waypoints will be laid out for you. And this next one here, now there's supposed to be 4. There we go. So you see you've got 4 different boxes down here. This is where the G1000 for a payware aircraft, at least in this case for the Flight 1 King Air 200, this is where it shines. So you've got all 4 of these down here, and that's how the real G1000 is laid out. You go to this page and then you use the other wheel to go from page to page within the group, right? And the only thing is the wheel's touchy here. So it looks like the down here goes through these pages, and up here changes through these different options. So on the waypoint options here, we've got individual waypoint information. So here's intersections, okay, and we can search for an intersection. Let me see if I can. So let me type in, this is the one I always type in, right, KBXK. So I type in KBXK, hit enter, and it's going to give me the information on that waypoint. All right. Now I'm in the intersection section, but you see I just typed in an airport because KBXK is not an intersection, is it? But I can continue on, so let me turn that off real quick. Off. Thank you. So you click the center again to turn the cursor off. Scroll again, and then here's Ndb information, and scroll one more time, takes us to the final page, and that's VOR information. So again, these are all Waypoint. This is all Waypoint information. So we've got our airport information, intersection information, Ndb information, and VOR information. You can type any one of them in there, and it will pull up the information on that waypoint for you. Okay, let's move to the next section. Here we've got a whole lot of information going on. This is our auxiliary page, primarily for trip planning. We don't have anything planned in there, but you look, there's all kinds of information in here. It'll give us our present position, calibrated airspeed, indicated altitude, what the pressure is put at right now, air temperature, trip stats, desired track distance, estimated time en route, estimated time of arrival, when the sunrise and sunset is, efficiency of our fuel usage, and so on and so forth. And even density altitude, which is a huge one actually, density altitude. So we've got a lot of information there just on this first page for our trip planning. And then we go to the next page and it tells us the status of our GPS, which this is something that you would definitely keep an eye on. You'd check back here once in a while, especially on a long flight. You want to make sure you're getting good GPS signal so that your aircraft is where it actually says it is, right? And then we go over here and we've got system setup page, and we can actually change a lot of this stuff. There's so much information on here. I'm not even going to sit here and try and go through it all right now because we're already like 45 minutes into this thing, and you're probably tired of looking at it. But you can even change the voice of the alert here, right? So I can change the time, right, to right now it's on UTC. I can go to local 24-hour or local 12-hour. Let's see, we can go to the wrong one there. We should be able to go. You can go through all of this. It's just, it takes some time. I'm just going to tell you right now, it takes some time. But there's a lot of information you can change on here, including all of this information here, whether or not it's giving you warnings about all of these, right? So, and I'm not sure if it all sets up in here or if some of this has to be set up in the configuration tool for this particular aircraft. But we're not going to mess around with it anyway. Just know that it is there. And it's just one more step of realism in this particular G1000. And then the last page in this section right here, this is system status, right? So it's giving us a bunch of information on the status of our system, our ADS comms, their serial numbers, whether or not they're working. It gives us our airframe information, software version, base map, Navigraph. This is telling us, when I do my checklist and it says I need to review my database for valid operating dates and cycle numbers, this is where it's at right here. Alright, so the current cycle is 1508. It's effective from this date to this date, and it'll expire here pretty soon. So lots of information there. And then now we can go over to the last page. Here is the nearest section, and you can see we've got 4 sections here as well. So we've got nearest airports come up first, and then nearest intersections, nearest NDBs, and of course nearest VORs. And you can select one of these, scroll down to it, hit enter. Come on, hit enter. Oh, nope, you don't hit enter on here, I apologize. You scroll down to it and it gives you the information on it right here, including the frequency, and then I believe you can hit direct to. Yep, if you hit the direct to button, it'll set it up as a direct waypoint like that, and then you can hit enter. It'll ask you if you want to activate. You can activate, and now I've got a direct route to that VOR. And the same could be said for any one of the others. So if I want to go direct to one of these NDBs, I would just scroll down to it. So there's HU. If I want to go direct to HU, once it's highlighted, I hit the direct to button, hit enter once, enter twice, and now it's direct to HU, and so on. And there you have it. So that is all the different information that is available on there. And that pretty much wraps it up. So I know it was a really long video, but there's so much information in here, and there are a few things I never even got to, but my videos are already long, so I apologize for that. But if you have any questions about this GPS, anything I've covered during this tutorial, anything else you'd like to see, please do not hesitate to leave it down in the comments. I've started to get a few requests for specific tutorials, and I'm starting to put some of those together. So for those of you who asked, I can't talk. For those of you who requested, so there you go. For those of you who requested specific tutorials, please keep an eye out. They will be coming out relatively soon. I've got so many things going on right now, so I apologize for any delays. This was a requested tutorial as well. So all of that being said, it's been a good time, except for our crash in the sim, of course, which is never fun. But hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the Garmin 1000 GPS. Keep in mind, please, that this is not in any way an all-encompassing GPS. There are a couple of tutorials you can find on the real-world GPS. This is for flight simulation only. Once again, flight simulation only. But I hope this was helpful to you. If you enjoyed it, or if it was helpful, please give a thumbs up, leave something in the comments down below, and as always, please subscribe to my channel. We are up to 81 subscribers, and I thank every one of you. And I look forward to seeing you guys up in the air. Until next time.